You're listening to NT Paranormal After Dark. Nothing normal about it.
Welcome back to NT Paranormal After Dark, the podcast. I'm Ashton Rogers, and Sarah Hatfield's here.
Is it after dark? I don't think it's after dark yet.
It's after dark. There's no light out. Mm-hmm. It's very obviously after dark. It's all of 7 o'clock here. You disagree?
Yes.
No? Oh, okay. I have no idea what dark is. So, we're done for the night because
good night.
I've completely discredited myself. Today we're talking about why ghost hunting is stupid. I think it's something we probably talk about at least.
Every podcast?
Every podcast, 3 times a week.
That's our whole motif.
On the weekends. Why what we specifically do is dumb. I don't think I think ghost hunting is stupid. I don't think paranormal research is stupid. We should probably define what we're talking about.
I think it's both stupid.
I don't think it's both stupid. I don't think it's both stupid at all. And you know what? What's funny is ghost hunting is kind of the de facto term that everybody uses, and I use it derogatory. Like if we're talking face to face with somebody else, like people that know me will catch it. But if I call somebody a ghost hunter, I'm kind of bashing them, at least in the back of my head. Like if I say somebody does paranormal investigation or paranormal research or something, what the fuck are you looking at?
The comments.
Oh.
I'm reading the comments. Should I not?
Why don't you have the comments like in front of you?
Because my phone needed a charge.
Oh.
See, you asked me before this episode if I was just going to bash you the whole time, and I said no, and now you're doing it. So
okay.
Shut your face.
But I don't know. I always use the term ghost hunter kind of derogatory.
I remember your whole spiel when we first started.
Yeah. I see ghost hunting as more of an amateur or somebody that's just kind of out hunting for ghosts, But I see somebody that when I see somebody that's even if they're not doing it the same way we are, but they're being deliberate. They're really trying to expand their own knowledge of what's going on. That's what's important to me. Not that everybody's doing everything right, but that they're trying to expand beyond their own horizons and more than just confirmation bias in my head. Because I think that's a big part of what the problem is the starting from the end and working backwards sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's the point that you brought up, is that most people start ghost hunting with the idea that ghosts are real and they're going to go prove it.
Yeah.
Which isn't totally backwards, but it's a little bit backwards for how research usually starts. Usually it's, I want to find the answer to a question. Mm-hmm. Like you should start, like if you were doing it the correct way, which we try to do, like the question would be, are ghosts real? Or what are ghosts? Or some kind of question that has a very, very specific answer. Mm-hmm. Not ghosts are real, I'll find proof.
Yeah.
Because you can do that with anything, even if it's incorrect, in my mind. Look at flat earthers. Mm-hmm. The earth is flat, I'm going to prove it's flat. There's plenty of evidence out there that the earth is flat. That doesn't make it flat. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts on that with other groups?
What I said, like they're just working backwards. They started with a theory. Ghosts are real.
Well, not even a theory, but they started with a fact that they made in their own head. Not even like, I think this and I'm going to try to prove it. It's, I know this and I'm going to try to prove it.
And that's just not how anything works.
It's how our...
And when they get anything that could be construed as proof, they go, oh, there it is, the proof. See, I was right.
There's the proof. There's the one. One of the things that bothers me about a lot of the paranormal evidence out there, so when you're looking at the chain of evidence, like when you're trying to prove something, you're looking for repeatable results. Or that's what we're looking for because we're doing it right. So
not the anomaly.
Yeah, when we get the thing that looks like it's paranormal, we want it to happen over and over again. And at that point, it becomes, more of a thing you can study or whatever. But what happens is an investigator goes out and takes 1,000 pictures, and in one picture, the picture's different, and they say, that's the proof, that's the proof. Well, if 999 times you got a different result, in one time, only one time out of 1,000, you got something interesting. You have to start thinking in terms of, no, that's a fault with the equipment, or something flew through the shed. It's something different. It's not the rule. That's the exception.
Yeah.
And but that's what's hard about paranormal research, I think, is because people are trying to explain what the exception to the rule is, and I think there's merit in that.
Well, but they're also never going with. It's seemingly they're not going with it was the camera, or it was something else. They seem to throw a lot by the wayside by jumping to ghost. It's like that cartoon I posted. I don't remember leaving the door open. It must be a ghost. That's the least logical explanation for this.
And suddenly I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah, and now I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah. There's a million answers and a million variables for a million different things that are going on out there, but people latch on to the least likely because that's the most interesting scenario. That's the thing that brings like wonderment, and I think people obsess.
Well, and back to flat
over
earthers, they go, "Oh, NASA computer generates pictures of space, therefore the Earth is flat."
That's true.
That's
absolutely true. Why is that not true? Prove it wrong.
But instead of saying that makes the Earth flat, maybe go, okay, maybe NASA's piecing together pictures digitally for some other reason.
Oh, what? No, you can't use logic in these arguments. That's not a thing that you can go to, especially in conspiracy discussions, especially in paranormal discussions. Like if we're all sitting around talking about Bigfoot, right? And I say it's Cro-Magnon-Epithecus, and it's just one. It's the one surviving one for everyone. Even though I'm like supporting the idea that there could be this thing, the fact that I'm calling it anything other than Bigfoot. So like when we talk about our paranormal findings, a lot of times we say, we believe that there's things that you're perceiving that we're calling paranormal or supernatural. Like this is an event that's happening, and it's observable. It's sometimes recordable in different aspects, but we don't think it's a ghost. Like we don't think it's your definition of what a ghost is.
It's not your dead grandma floating around.
Right. That really unsettles people, even though it's just the semantics of it. They have to be attached to the idea of they know exactly what it is. If it's not your dead grandmother, or it's not a soul or a demon or something related to your religion, then we're just completely wrong.
Yeah.
Even though we're saying no, like you're not nuts. You're totally having this experience. Like you're living in the same reality we all are. We're all experiencing the same events the same way, but we're putting a more grounded explanation to what it could be. We're putting a testable explanation of what, because if you just say it's a ghost, what is a ghost? There's not even a unified idea of what a ghost is. But if I say it's a being from another dimension, then suddenly we're putting a specifier on it, and then we can start to develop a test that decides, is it or is it not that thing? And then say we prove that wrong. Okay, that's wrong. Okay, well, the event is still happening. Nobody's denying that sometimes these events are happening or people are experiencing. But now we can move on to the next thing. And that's a very extreme example. Like, you start with tests like, is the person schizophrenic?
Yeah.
Is the plumbing bad when they hear knocks and noises? You test all those things. And then once you rule all the normal things that we 100% understand out, we go into the things that are only testable or theoretical. But you can't just put a label on something and say, I'm going to prove it's a ghost. Well, I mean, you can't prove to me that water isn't a ghost, because your definition of what a ghost is, my definition of what a ghost is completely two different things.
Yeah. And that really ties into two of the other things, we mentioned, is that it's all guesswork. All of this is guesswork. You're guessing about what equipment you should use, what things you should do, and what you're even trying to observe. And that it's all tied to emotion, your feelings on it.
Right.
You want to believe that grandma's trying to tell you she's okay from the other side.
So I would say at this point, so we've been doing this a while now. Like, we started like everybody. We didn't know jack going into. I mean, we still don't know jack. Nobody knows anything about the paranormal past. You know what's already out there, but we have been working with people for a long time now, and we have done a bunch of investigations and figured out, okay, this thing that we were doing that didn't prove anything, so let's change it, do things like that. But with all the people that we've talked to, I would say somewhere about 80% of the evidence that people present to us has been just straight experience, personal experience. And we say that's not evidence, but people feel completely different about that. Yeah, like we had Jared here. Jared is a really intelligent person.
Yeah.
He's got a really good podcast, and he does really good interviews.
That podcast is someone you should know.
Yeah.
It's really good.
But he does a good job of asking the right questions and understanding the subject matter. Like he's not sharp at all. But when he's talking with us about the paranormal, even for someone that sharp that gets what we do, like 100% understands our side of it, still when he's talking about the paranormal, he's applying his own personal experience to it and saying that is the convincing factor for him.
Yeah.
Not any of the other stuff that's going on.
Which is fine if that's the convincing factor for you. Your job is to convince other people. Kristen made a comment, or research doesn't work that way anyway. You can't say, prove me wrong. Burden of proof, by definition, the burden of proof lies with someone who is making the claim and is not upon anyone else to disprove. The inability or disinclination to disprove a claim does not render that claim valid or give it any credence whatsoever.
Yes, and she's very right on a lot of points there, like 100%. But it's also not that cut and dry too.
I think it is.
Well, okay, so I think in a lot, I think the key point she's kind of glossing over is the objectiveness of an experiment, or the objectiveness of I'm losing the word, but watch a study, the objectiveness of it. And if you're truly being objective, you're not worried about the burden of proof. You are, but you're not worried about proving somebody wrong or right. You're wanting to watch a study, collect the data, and whatever answer you get at the end is the answer you get.
Yeah.
And then if you're really observant, you run the experiment again to see if the results are the same. And then you run the experiment again to see if the results are the same. Like, people have in their head that, like, when Newton came up with the idea of gravity.
Oh, he saw one apple fall.
He just saw one apple, and he's like, I get it.
I bet he threw a lot of apples up in the air.
He did a shit ton of work. I mean, and it's bye, Kristen. It's just amazing to me that people aren't willing to remain objective and unbiased in this field. I've met other.
By my estimation, people are unwilling to remain objective or unbiased about literally anything.
Yeah, and I can't say that I'm not biased
We all biased
in our research. Like, I can be personally biased and be like, but I let the data sit where it is, and where other researchers are going in with the goal of proving that the paranormal exists. And then some researchers go in with the goal to prove that the paranormal isn't real at all. My goal has maybe not always been, but developed into, I want to go where there are paranormal events or reports of paranormal events and collect all the data that can possibly try to prove it wrong, try to prove it right, just see where all the chips fall. And then whatever the answer is in that's fine. But then do that over and over and over and over again. And then what I want to find is correlation between all the cases. And I think that's going to reveal something that's worth looking at. Because I think the real problem is, and you hit the nail right on the head, is we don't know what we're studying.
Yeah, we don't know what we're studying. We don't know enough about the tools we're using. We don't know why we're using them. And we don't even know what like we were discussing the other day. how do we even know what makes a ghost want to talk to you?
Right.
How do you have any idea?
Yeah, we're applying our own emotion in human experience to something that we don't even know what it is. So if you do that, that absolutely means somewhere in your head you think ghosts are human. If it has human motives and it has gorillas can communicate with us. They can learn sign language. They can do human things, but gorillas are not humans.
No, they have completely different motives.
They have different motivations. They just want to eat and be left alone.
Pretty much all animals have the same 3 motives, the 3 Fs. Mm-hmm. You know, food, or fighting, and reproduction.
That's an R.
Food, fucking, and fighting.
Oh,
that's what all animals. That's their sole motives.
I totally didn't get it. Yeah.
Yeah. You just wanted me to say the F word on air.
Well, I think humans have the same motive too. I mean, we're similar.
We act like we don't,
but we're not the same.
We act like we're above that.
We have motivations for money, greed,
narcissism.
I'm struggling to come up with good motives, altruism. Things that just don't exist anymore.
We want to make the happy chemicals in our brains. That's what we want to do. We want serotonin, endorphins, and oxytocin.
But different things do that for different types of beings. So what makes a gorilla happy is similar to what makes us happy. But if I give a gorilla $500 tax-free, he doesn't give it.
Well, and I was reading a study on oxytocin, and I'm not sure how this links in, but I found it interesting. So oxytocin is the cuddle chemical, right? It's how you bond with newborn babies.
It releases when you have human contact.
It also releases in cases of tribal behavior. So the KKK go out and burn a bunch of crosses.
Gives them oxytocin. Yeah,
it produces it. So your motives don't have to be good for good chemicals. I just found that very interesting.
That is very interesting.
Like endorphins. Pleasure makes endorphins, but pain also makes endorphins.
Right, and different people could react to stimuli differently. I mean, you have serial killers and people that go out. That's their way of forming more oxytocin, serotonin, the feel good chemicals. Because whatever is going on in their brain, it's either broken or it produces more than the other, or they didn't get enough of the other thing. And that one thing is what caused it. So they think that's the only way they can get that thing.
Yeah, so lynching people produces good chemicals in your brain if you do it as a tribe. And
well, I mean, think about it. In the Middle Ages, it was like nothing but public executions. Like people went and they were cheering for these things as a mob. You had freaking witch trials. You know, it's obviously the Puritans really liked burning witches.
And Daniel made a point, you've got to divorce emotion from investigations and experimentation. But I don't think that's completely possible.
Not if you're the one is part of it. Now, if you're the observer, you can divorce emotion from it.
If you don't care about the subject, but just by the fact that we were attracted to this field,
right,
we cannot divorce ourselves from
we have a predisposition to what we want the result to be, or what we want the findings to be. And that is a big problem with the field. I think, you know, I don't want to just blow smoke up our own ass, but I think we do a better job of divorcing emotion from
than a lot of people.
Or we're at least willing to go back and look at the experience and say, no, there was too much emotion involved in this.
And we're willing to say we're biased.
Yeah.
Oh, Emilio asked, could these chemicals make a person actually believe they are doing the right thing even if they aren't? Yes, very much so.
Absolutely.
People that burn crosses on lawns, they think they're the good guys. Everyone's a good guy.
Most people don't think that they're evil. I mean, if you had a time machine, you went back and talked to Hitler, do you think he would think he was a bad person? No, he would say, no, I'm reforming look at Trump. I'm making the country a better place.
Yeah.
Well, you're locking up kids in cages. Oh, well, you know.
I'm not sure if these people really think they're the good guy, but I think a lot of people do.
But they don't think they're evil. I don't think they think they're the Antichrist.
But in cases of oxytocin being released upon tribal behavior, yes, their main motivation is fitting in with the tribe, and it makes them think that whatever they have to do to fit in with the tribe is the right behavior.
Or maybe they're not hung up on the idea of good and evil. or right and wrong so much as in what is the best decision for like right now?
What's right for me right
like,
now?
I guarantee if you look at people that are doing bad things, they're not thinking ahead. They're thinking about what gets me through this moment, like right now, with the greatest of ease. Well, if you're in like some kind of bad, I mean, look at people that grow up in like impoverished neighborhoods where there's a lot of crime or whatever. Well, their only choice was to like join a gang and start selling drugs. Well, they're not really thinking about. Well, if I sell this drug to so and so down the line is going to overdose,
or I'm
and
making someone an addict. And
yeah,
what
they're thinking is that this is about the only way I can escape my situation. Yeah. Or if I join this gang, then I don't have to worry about them shooting me.
I don't think most people are good or bad. I think it's just.
I think people make decisions based on what's going to make their quality of life livable.
Yeah.
And I think it's easier. Like, I think it's easier to pontificate things like good and evil when you're in a place of privilege and status. Like me, like I can afford to sit here and have a podcast and think about things like good and evil because I'm not trying to survive at that level.
Yeah. I also think there is another group of people that only think about what other people want. And do so to the point that it breaks them down.
Well, and to another point, I think there's a bell curve to it too. Once you get so rich where you don't have to worry about anything, good and evil doesn't matter anymore because you're so far above the middle and lower class. These people aren't even human to you anymore, like in that sort of thinking. So,
Heather says trauma bonds include release of oxytocin and dopamine. Yeah, that's.
What do you think the relationship to the paranormal is with oxytocin? Do you think?
Okay, so another thing that releases oxytocin is if a bunch of people like your post on Facebook. Mm-hmm. So when we do find this picture we've wanted, that produces oxytocin.
Yeah, it puts us in the spotlight.
It produces dopamine and endorphins.
Yeah, I can't lie. I really like people watch the podcast or people are interested in the thing that we found or when we make a really good point, everybody's like, oh, yeah, you're right. That's really good. Yeah, that's a good feeling.
The actual ghost hunt, it also releases endorphins because we have adrenaline and dopamine. It makes you feel good, and oxytocin because you're getting approval, even if it's your own approval.
Right. Well, and I think the adrenaline plays a big factor in it, too, like all the stuff that's going on with your amygdala at the time.
Well, that's endorphins. I mean, I think it becomes... I think people limit addiction to things like drugs and sex, these negative things. But
you can become addicted to...
working out.
Yeah.
Love and relationships. I think everyone on the planet is an addict. I've said that forever. I think everyone who is alive right now is an addict. Because that's how your brain works.
Right.
You just have to decide if
you're just addicted to your own chemical. Like, even when you take drugs, it's...
reproducing your own chemicals.
It's reproducing your own whatever chemical of choice it is that you like. What's funny is I really like the adrenaline of a ghost hunt and being scared, but I have high anxiety, and I hate that feeling. I hate feeling of anxiety, the anxiousness and the despair and all that. But I go to these investigations and things like that because somehow I'm also addicted to that same feeling. Right. But I think what I'm addicted to is controlling that. Like when I go to do it...
Yeah, it's in a controlled setting. You're choosing it.
Yeah. Well, I think what it is it's like I have control over that feeling. It's like, okay, I'm going to go to this anxious situation, and then if I don't like it, I can choose to turn it off. Or I can debunk that thing and feel better about it. It's not aversion therapy. What is it when you face your fears or whatever?
Exposure therapy.
Exposure. Yeah, it's almost like exposure
Carlos
therapy.
says we are addicted to oxygen. There's a difference between addiction and dependency.
Yeah, we are
dependent on oxygen. Where were we?
I like it. We went on a tangent about all the chemicals in your brain. But
when people think that grandma's coming to visit them after death, it's releasing this oxytocin. It makes them feel good, and they don't want you to take that away from them very desperately.
Yeah. Well, in some cases. But in some cases, there's the opposite. And we were talking about this a little bit. How does that affect anxiety stress level leading up to getting the wanted approval? I don't know. It's kind of a good question, but I kind of don't get it. I guess I don't put that much thought into it. I don't get anxious over whether or not anybody's approved. Like if I'm not getting the approval, I just move on to the next thing or whatever. I don't get anxious. I guess that's why like I don't get stage fright. Like it's so weird. I'm high anxiety. I have high levels of social anxiety,
but not stage fright.
I don't get stage fright. Like I can go to our events, I can talk to people, I can do tours, I can talk to strangers. I'll go to a restaurant and flirt with the waitress. Like none of that stuff is problematic for me. But as soon as like I do stand up comedy sometimes, but thinking that somebody I know like from work might be in the audience,
that makes you anxious.
That skeeves me out. Like I don't want that to happen. Like I don't mix those two things. So I have a harder time dealing with anxiety when it's somebody I have a personal relationship with strangers or a strange building or a case or whatever. So
meanwhile, I'm opposite.
Yeah, like you put a lot of stock into what strangers think.
Yeah,
like
well,
I think this doesn't bother you so much because it's just me and you in here, and you can kind of tune it out. But
it's not so much what they think as I'm afraid they're going to say something super negative to me, and it's not even going to be constructive, and I don't handle that well. Constructive criticism I can handle. Oh, hey, there was this thing about what you said I didn't like. Let me tell you how to do it better.
Yeah.
As opposed to, you're an idiot, get off the stage.
Yeah, I even have a hard time with constructive criticism if I think you're doing it in a way that makes you pretentious. So so we do the videos and we do the podcast and all that. And I do all the producing, directing, editing, all that stuff. It's a thing I like doing.
Yeah.
That may be one of the main reasons that I even do the paranormal investigation is because I like producing the content more than the actual research. But I'm strangely geared toward it. It's really weird. But me liking all those things means I have a lot of friends that make movies and videos and are actors and some of them like live in LA and do it legit, and some of them like live here and do it on a smaller scale. And when we first went on Amazon and started doing that and editing videos, and they would watch it and they would try to give me constructive criticism, and it sat wrong in my head, even though they're trying to be helpful. I don't necessarily think they're trying to be condescending or anything like that, but in my head it twists it into that. I'm like, you pretentious I'm like, your videos aren't any better than mine. Your editing skills aren't any better than mine. You just think you're better at it because you've been doing it longer. Like, I got this friend, I'm not named by name, but he watches movies, posts reviews of movies, and every time I see his reviews show up in my feed, I'm just like, you prick. He's just like, he just dumps on everything that's not something he made. And I'm like, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but man, do you ever just go to a movie and have a good time anymore?
Just watch it.
Like, I like some really trash movies, and I'll say they're trash, but I don't mean it in the same way. I don't think that it's very rare that I think like a movie is just bad or pointless or not worth my time or anything like that. But but as far as like the approval, like how that factors in. Yeah, I like the approval, I like the adoration or whatever, but that isn't even a source of my anxiety. My anxiety is, can I keep a roof over my head? Am I going to get fired from my job? I could care. I'm such a loner anyway. I don't care if anybody likes me at all or whatever. And it's an advantage and a disadvantage because it makes me a very real person, but it makes me a very unlikable person sometimes.
I was saying, my friends are my friends because they can tolerate me. Not a lot of people can.
Yeah.
And I don't care.
Well, and the thing is like I like honesty over likability in a person. Like if I meet somebody and they're very real. This is a good example. So like we've met a lot of other investigative teams. And there's only a few that we've worked with more than like once or twice.
Yeah.
Like Emilio and Carlos, they're very real. They're very open about everything they're doing. a lot of the other and they're upfront with, we have flaws in the way we've done things. We're trying to learn. We're trying to expand. We're trying to do things different than what you're doing. You know, they have disagreements with us, but they're very like upfront and real about it. They're not talking out of the side of their mouth and putting on this like big show, like we're going to get a TV show out of this. There's other groups, which I won't mention names, that they seem like they're upfront at first, and then you realize it's all about the show. Like they're like, oh no, we're totally down with
We're
science.
science-based, except that.
But they're out buying the paranormal gear that they know is going to light up and make noise,
yeah.
even though we've told them, hey, this just lights up and make noise because of this. Yeah, and it's, you know, and I don't know. There's merit to some of that equipment, and I'm fine with the show or whatever, but, you know, at least we're up front. So, like, when we first started releasing our videos, there were these 6 hour-long affairs, and it was honest, but it was boring. And at some point, we had to be entertaining, not because we're trying to, like, package a show for anybody, but because we want people to see what we're finding, and the only way they're going to do that is if it's presented to them in an entertaining
if it's watchable.
manner. Yeah. So we had to get really watchable really quick, which means I had to watch people making their shows. And, okay, what are you doing to get views? What are you doing to get people to pay attention to what's going on? And we had to emulate some of that. But what we're trying to do is rebrand that. We're trying to put real science, real information, real investigation into it, and real honesty into it, but also make it entertaining. So, yeah, we took 6 hours of footage and cut it down to an hour to a watchable format. And yeah, there's a lot of it missing. But anybody who asks and says, "Well, I want to see all the stuff in between," I think
we'll give it to you.
Yeah, I think you might be editing this. Dude, here's the full cut.
Enjoy.
Here's everything. If you want to sit through 12 hours of this and find something wrong, that is absolutely great, because I've had somebody do that, and we went back and we said, hey, so-and-so found this thing in here, and we were wrong. And so-and-so found that thing and showed it to us thinking, oh, this will completely discredit him. And then when we came out and said, no, we're wrong about this, and gave them credit for finding it, it boosted our credibility through the roof. It did the opposite of what I thought would happen. It didn't make us look stupid. It made us look smart, which is hilarious because we are not at all. But
so we got this list of why ghost hunting is stupid. So we did the working backwards one. They're working from the end to the beginning.
Yeah, you start with the solution, and then you try to prove the solution, as opposed to having a question, running an objective test, and seeing where the cards fall on it.
And the next one is it's too experience based, which, you know, we talked about eyewitness accounts being the biggest evidence,
which is the most unreliable thing ever.
Yeah,
there's so many things wrong with your memory and your senses. Personal experience is great and it's valid for you, is your own personal thing, but
and the root question is, who are you trying to prove this to?
Right. I think that's a big thing that totally gets lost in the whole mix, is who are you trying to prove it to? Like when we first started doing it and we were doing it the way we were, I was trying to prove it to me.
Yeah, that's how I started. I wanted to prove it to me.
Yeah. And I got to a point where
that's still where I am.
Well, I kind of had it proved to me, and then I proved things wrong to me, and I went back and forth. But then other people started asking really good questions about that. Well, what about this? Well, this experiment, every ghost hunter does that thing you're doing, and this is what's wrong with it. And then I was like, oh, you know what? You're right. How can I fix that? How can I, and I asked the question, how can I prove it to you? And they said, oh, do it this way. Okay. And I did it that way. And I did it that way. And I did it that way over and over and over again. Got the same results. I was like, it's interesting that it came out that way. And then sometimes even doing it the way that we were told to by an expert who doesn't believe in ghosts, we were still getting some results. And then they were on board. They're like, wow, that's interesting.
I think the two questions everyone needs to ask is, who am I trying to prove this to? And what would prove it to them or me? What would it take to, if you have a target audience, you need to know what it would take. If you're the target audience, you need to decide what it would take for you to believe it.
Yeah.
Because then you have your questions.
The other thing, okay, so you have this burden of proof, what we call evidence. And I think in reality, there's a distinct line between evidence and proof.
Yeah.
Evidence supports, with enough evidence, it can become proof. But you have to have a lot.
Yeah.
And it has to support something unanimously to be proof, to be a fact.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a reason they have to test new drugs for so long before they come out with them.
But a lot of people think evidence is proof. And the other thing is we commonly accept proof or evidence from people that are experts in the field that are talking. So, like, when you're in a court, and they call me up as an expert on, I don't know.
Well, like my mom used to do, she was a sexual assault nurse examiner.
Right.
She was an expert witness as a nurse.
She was an RN,
yeah.
though she's trained in the medical field. Mm-hmm. But if they had asked her to come up and be an expert on how slippery are banana peels, she's not a banana peel expert, right?
Yeah.
Well, in the paranormal field,
you're taking an engineer, someone who was an EMT, someone who did criminal justice courses in school, and someone who did psychology, and you're going, now figure out ghosts and become an expert witness for the paranormal. None of these things compute.
Right. Well, and it's even worse in other paranormal teams, because you look at other paranormal teams. Well, what's your background? Oh, well, I work in a mailroom. I'm a plumber. And I'm not saying these people aren't educated. Like I went left field with that. That's not what I mean. I think you can be a plumber and be a fucking genius.
Yeah.
That's great.
They make a lot of money.
Yeah. But there's a lot of people where their group is comprised of just people that were interested in it. And just being interested in something and watching YouTube videos does not make you an expert. Back to the flat earthers. Those people aren't geologists.
Or anti-vaxxers.
Yeah.
I'm not going to listen to a doctor because I've been on Google for 72 consecutive hours. That's not how that works.
It causes a lot of conflicting problems. And like,
I don't understand what Emilio means by that.
I don't think you can make an educated decision as an audience. Ooh, elaborate on that.
Like, you don't think if you're watching, you can make an educated guess, or like a group of people can't?
I mean, just even though our videos are honest. But if anybody was just completely convinced based off of like our Amazon product, that would be a poor decision, because we're not presenting enough evidence in that,
and they don't know who we are and what we're doing. Right?
Yeah, that's a real problem. Is the expert that you're consulting or whoever's putting out the stuff, there's a credibility issue.
There's no such thing as a paranormal expert because we don't understand what the paranormal is.
Right. And, like Mr. Farley up here.
Our dust expert.
Yeah. Who,
I like how you put that on the card. Neil Farley, dust expert.
He was. Here, hold on. Let me see if I can bring this up. So I got blasted on my... hysterically on our page here. Let's see. Oh, yeah, it does bring it up. So he posted this. Sorry, skeptics. But dust can't do this, and for just the audio people, it's
a picture of I don't think it looks like a face, but a face in a dust.
Okay,
flash.
Look, it's a dust particle, and it's zoomed in to like 9,000 times, like it's ultimately like super pixelated, right? And I had reposted, and my comment on it was simple. Like I'm fine with like orb arguments. Like, if you think that's a thing, that maybe that's a thing. But if you're going to argue it from like a factual standpoint is where I was getting at. And he's like, dust can't do this. First off, dust can look like anything.
Yeah, and I don't think dust expert is a title at all. It's like being a paranormal expert. I'm a snowflake expert. They're all different shapes.
Well, okay, so what was my exact comment on here? Hold on, let me go back. I said we can do better than this. Dust can do that. Dirt can do that. Moisture can do that. I'm fine if you want to make an argument for orbs, but do your homework. Learn about light waves. Perform an experiment to actually show it one way or the other. Basically, what I was getting at is don't just take a okay, I took this picture and dust can't do this because I say dust can't do this. Mm-hmm. And he came back and just like blasted me. He's like, the scientific community, the religious community, they all agree that we came from dust. And I posted this to over 25 Facebook groups, and nobody argued with me, so I know I'm right.
Yeah, no one argued with me, therefore I'm right.
Yeah, and that's a horrible argument. Nobody wants to argue with you because you're an idiot. But it was nuts. So I think what bothered me about that is like the way it was posted, like where I ripped it from and shared it and made my comment about it.
I'm right because I'm effing right. That's
yeah. And he's just belittling skeptics, which is a big problem on both sides of the fence. Is belittling the other side. I thought it was a broken Lego. The essence of the word paranormal means it will never be there will never be an expert. Yeah, that's true. Paranormal means, there's no scientific...
If there was an expert.
Yeah, there's no scientific explanation for it. Yeah. That's why paranormal science is a complete oxymoron. It's hilarious.
Paranormal pseudoscience, you mean?
Yeah, well, I throw it around... Well, that would actually be correct. But I throw it around ironically as like the title to some of our presentations.
Paranormal science.
Yeah, and then... other people have like picked up on that and they're like paranormal science, and I'm like, that's not a thing at all.
A paranormal pseudoscience, that's what it is. A nice straw horse argument from the dust expert. Yeah, the whole thing was a straw man.
Oh man, he got into camouflage. I have a few problems with the argument he made. First off, he said dust can't do that, basically claiming that this is an orb. Okay, so orbs are described as balls of energy that you've taken pictures of.
Am I going to get hate mail from this guy like the last guy we blasted on the show?
I hope so.
Okay, I'll send it your way if I get more nasty messages on my Facebook.
I don't care. Bring it. He can come here and sit in here and talk to me on the podcast.
I was more irritated that it took my time than I was at what he was saying.
But he was saying, okay...
Paranormal science gets the same looks as ethical hacking.
But he's saying dust can't do this. Dust can't produce this result. This is an orb. Orb described as it's a picture of a ball of energy, right? Okay, so then when I say, okay, this isn't a thing, blah, 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 we've disproved this. And I'll get into exactly how we disproved it, how we use science to disprove most orb photographs. But his comeback for that was first off, I've posted this to 25 groups, and no one there has disagreed with me.
If you looked up the definition of confirmation bias,
absolutely,
that would be it.
Yeah, that's a huge thing in the paranormal community. Mm-hmm. His second argument was that science, modern science, and religion both agree that we came from dust. Now, we didn't come from dust, but we all come from the same
particles,
right? And what he's quoting is that we have stardust. And, okay, all that's true. We're all made of the same materials, whatever, fine. But in his argument, what he's saying is that we're taking a picture of dust, and that's why it's real. Okay, is it dust or is it not dust? If it's an orb, it's something else. If it's dust, then you're proving me 100% right. It doesn't matter. Okay, fine. Now your argument is that the paranormal can manipulate dust. Well, then fucking say that. Yeah. But then dust can then you're agreeing with me that dust can absolutely do this thing. Like he's painted himself in a corner. But so my opinion of what makes paranormal, not paranormal, what makes ghost hunting just absolutely bonkers, right? Mm-hmm. Is the evidence that people are willing to accept. The big one is orbs, and I see it's in every video. Hell, we tag them in our videos. Yeah. Which I may actually stop doing that after the research I just did, right? But orbs have always bothered me because we basically disproved them with our mono-wavelength experiment. And anybody that doesn't know what our mono-wavelength experiment is, I don't know if I've explained it on the podcast. I've explained it tons of times. But basically what it is you remove all the light sources from a room. And you're using a filter over your flash, which is going to be the only light source. So the only colors you're going to get back are going to... everything. The camera receives... images because it's receiving that reflected light. So if you're controlling the color of the light source, then everything should show up that color.
I put a red filter over my camera, and all the orbs came back red.
You put a green one, they all come back
green.
green. You do a blue one, they all come back blue. So what that means is light is bouncing off of something in the air and coming back to it's something solid. It's not an orb of, because if it was an orb of energy, it would produce its own light. It absolutely 100% proves that.
But see, that to me, the problem with our mono wavelength photography has always been that we're guessing it would produce its own light.
Well, but that's the theory that we were specifically that's where we were doing it right. So there's not a general consensus of what an orb could be. We were testing the specific theory that it's orbs of energy. So who's to say that solid thing bouncing light back isn't paranormal? I've never said that. I've said there's something solid there and it bounces light back.
And what was the other thing you found out about dust?
Okay, so that's why I say orbs are bullshit, because everything we've ever done on every investigation ever, except for one picture, ever,
out of 10,000,
it didn't look like an orb. It looked like an aura.
It looked like a light off in the distance,
right?
But there wasn't,
but there's no light. But that's still not orb. That proved okay. This experiment works. What the hell is that? It's not an orb, but so that pretty much turned me completely off to 100% of all the dust photos I ever see in the streaks. And I learned more about shutter speed and all that. But I was still always interested in all the evidence that we gathered with other pieces of equipment where an orb was also present. And it always made me think, it's like, well, if we were doing a mono wavelength experiment during that particular time, would that come back as a ball of energy? Because a lot of times ghost adventurers or ghost hunters, they're walking around with their EMF detector or their spirit box or whatever, and right before or right after the event, you see an orb by it. And I'm like, oh, it could be a coincidence. I'm not a real big proponent of orbs, but I tag it.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, this is a part of a chain of events. So maybe this is a case where an orb makes sense. And so I go ahead and tag it, like, just in case, and it's a thing. But I was this week, I don't know how I fell into it too. Let me bring it up here. I found a really good peer-reviewed article. It was in 2016 URSI Commission B International Symposium on Electromagnetic Theory. These are the things I read when I'm really bored. And I'll post a link to it later. Anybody that wants to read, it's really long. It's really in depth. But what this paper was about was dynamics of small particles in electromagnetic radiation fields, and they apply math to it. And basically the question they were trying to answer was, do dust particles floating around in the air, do they contain their own EMF, electromagnetic radiation, or do they reflect electromagnetic radiation? And it's really embarrassing that as an engineer I didn't think of this, because I know that if something's dusty, it can have a static charge. And without even reading the paper, I was like, oh, absolutely, dust gains. Oh shit. And it just like hit me all of a sudden. I'm like, the reason a lot of times you see dust, you see orbs in these IR images of, oh, I got this really cool EMF spike, and then an orb like flies around, because the fucking EMF detector is reading your orb, your dust, because dust,
which completely invalidates every EMF reading ever, by the way.
Yeah, like it blew my mind to suddenly realize that, and I should have known that. It makes me mad because like
sometimes you miss the obvious. It happens.
I did. Yeah, I was so focused on the nuts reading. It didn't occur. The very, very like simple Occam's razor, the simplest solution, completely eluded me, because I've worked on microelectronics my whole life. If you're building microelectronics, you're supposed to be in a clean room, because if dust flies in there while you're doing it, can short it out because it carries static electricity. Well, what does your EMF detector detect? oh shit, yeah, like suddenly it starts clicking. And so when you're going into these places, especially abandoned places,
so many of these places are abandoned,
and
there's dust everywhere.
And okay, so they came up to two conclusions. Some dust does contain electromagnetic radiation because there's all sorts of things in dust. Stuff from like the last mass extinction event, comet dust, things that have entered the atmosphere, things from the ground that have been buried, that have moved around, lead.
So it's mostly human skin, but besides that,
Yeah, but even all these things are factors, and some of that stuff has electromagnetic radiation that's going to read. Other stuff that's inert, where it's just like sediment, dirt, things like that. Well, the fact that I think they even show. Yep, there's the diagram. So dust is inhomogeneous, which means 100% random, completely no form. All these like little round and flat parts and stuff like that, which by the way reflect light in different
snowflakes.
directions. Yeah,
they're all different shapes.
There's no two exactly the same. It's never going to happen.
Damn liberal snowflakes.
And the thing is everything can reflect electromagnetic radiation. So, especially in places where you would be ghost hunting, where there's fucking dust flying around everywhere, that stuff is causing the spikes.
Emilio says, so run a negative ion generator in that room for 30 minutes to settle all dust to the floor, then run EMF experiments. But you're screwing that experiment because you're in there breathing and moving around. Just existing in that room has stirred up the dust.
Yeah,
there's no way to stop that.
The really funny thing about...
I guess you could hang an EMF detector in there and leave the room.
Yeah. Well, and also deionizing the room only works to a certain degree. Like, you're never going to be 100% deionized. Like, because you're not working... Only if you're working in sterile environments do you get that sort of thing. No, you can have things within a certain degree of error, I'm not saying all EMF readings are complete BS and it's because of dust. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it never occurred to me that these things that I was tagging as a coincidence as something paranormal might have actually been the cause in the first place. And all of a sudden, like, my thinking about nothing has changed about that event, but suddenly I'm thinking about it in a different light, where before I would have saw that orb and I would have been like, this is supporting evidence. Now I see that orb and I think this is the thing that makes that reading not valuable anymore.
I just love when anything like this pops up and discredits everything everyone has ever done in this field for research.
Yeah.
I love it.
And this isn't a new paper. This is from 2016. And then I was like, okay, I wanted to double check it. I love Google Scholarly.
Nicholas says, never knew that dust contained possible EMF. You've made me more intricate about details.
Absolutely. Like
and I never thought of it either.
I should have thought of it. I'm a fucking mechanical engineer. Oh,
and Daniel says, you realize that dust aside, you by walking in the room making EMF. Yeah, we've always.
We've advocated that forever. Just by being, I was about to say that is the funny thing about paranormal research is everybody wants to be there for the
just
experience.
By existing in this experiment, you've screwed the experiment.
Yeah. If you wanted to really know, we still do, as much as we try to do, we still like the experience, and that's why we do it the way we do it. And yeah, there's still some chance, but a true objective experiment would not have us there.
Except the problem with that is if they're only interacting because we're there.
There's so many variables to that because we don't know what ghosts are.
That's the real big like I said, that's exactly why ghost hunting is stupid. It can all be summed up.
What if
in
ghosts
one
are
thing.
actually dust?
That's the problem. I said it can all be summed up by one statement. This is all guesswork. Literally everything we do, from the equipment to the experiments to the idea of what it is a guess.
Anyway, Google Scholarly. I'll post the links to these articles. They're peer reviewed. If you guys want to read them, they're pretty lengthy and there's a lot of math in them. But I think you guys can handle it. But Thank you for introducing me to Google Scholarly.
Oh, you're
though.
welcome. I love Google Scholarly.
I didn't know. I didn't know it
thing.
was a thing. But if you basically just type Scholarly at the end of anything you're searching,
And it'll bring up peer-reviewed
it's
articles.
only peer-reviewed articles, things that have been extensively fact-checked by professionals.
Because I like to talk to anti-vaxxers a lot in groups, and that's how I discovered it. Is I went in and I just typed in scholarly articles for vaccines, because when they type it in, they just type in vaccines are bad, and they get a bunch of proof.
Yeah. If you pick the top 5, the good thing is that first article I got it on the not scholarly one. It happened to come up because of the way I had worded the search, and I was like, oh crap, I need to do a scholarly check on it, and it popped up on that too. And then I found like 4 other
Julie
papers.
said, "Isn't that like the observation of the cat thing?" No, that's just proving that things can exist in 2 different forms. Light can be a wave and a particle, right? That's so quantum physics.
Is it true that spirit orbs have a wide range of different colors? Do you know which color translates? I've seen that meme 20,000 times.
We don't think spirit orbs are a thing.
Yeah, and he might have come into the conversation a little bit
we don't
late.
think orbs are a thing, but because we do an experiment that bounces a color of light off them.
Right. And you have to use multiple colors because, like, what if orbs are red? Then your red filter's not proving anything.
I think
so you
if
have to
there
search
were spirit orbs, they probably would come in different colors.
The closest thing we've got was an aura. We used a red filter, and we got a green aura back. That's the only time we've got a different color back than what we were using at the time. In everything that we do, we cycle through 3 or 4 different colors, including UV and IR. And we're doing it with a full spectrum camera. So it only
does come up with some really beautiful pictures, though.
Oh, yeah.
I love the light painting pictures.
Yeah, and we mess with the shutter speed, and we started doing things and we got different results, different ways, and it proves different things about the environment. But it always comes to the same conclusion that spot is something in the air that reflected light back.
What that experiment has proved to me is 100% beyond the shadow of a doubt. Orbs are not a thing.
Not in the way
people
not is
think
described. They say, see, the thing is people say, I took a picture and I saw the ball of light when they were there. I don't disbelieve that because
Emilio was asking about a light y'all saw in Warehouse 9 that y'all saw with y'all's own eyes.
Oh yeah, and we didn't get a picture of it. Or we did. We got it on video, and it shows up like a freaking dust particle. But that's one of the rare occasions where I saw it. So most of our orb pictures, most people's orb pictures, they take a picture and they didn't see it. It only shows up in the picture. But sometimes people have the story of I saw it, like it glowed, and then they get it and it just looks like dust. Okay, as a third party observer, it's real easy for me to say that was just dust. But in that particular event, yeah, I saw
a light.
Yeah, I saw a light. Now, it could have been a reflection, is the thing. It still could have just been dust, and it could have reflected back to my eye. There could have been a brighter light in there that we weren't aware of. Angles.
Yeah.
Angles are a weird thing. Light is a weird thing. But on that camera footage, on that IR footage, it just looks like dust.
Yeah.
But it didn't look like dust to the naked eye because it was pitch black in there, and we saw a white streak kind of go. Like I thought somebody had a flashlight or something.
And Daniel says all science is guesswork, experimentation, and theory. Yes, but at least in science, you're an expert in the things you're using. You're an expert in how to do the experiment, or you're an expert in the field you're studying.
Well, it's not even expertise. It's that there are procedures. There's procedural. Science isn't the question that you're trying to answer. That's the guesswork. The act of finding the answer. That's the part that's supposed to be guesswork. You still have a rigid set of procedures that you follow no matter what. And if things fall outside of that or don't match up with what your idea of what the answer should be, that's tough titty. That's how science works. The science part isn't the guesswork. It's always the same. It's a controlled environment, and anything outside the controls, or if anything contaminates, you have to throw the evidence out. And that's completely how that works. But with paranormal investigation, we do it different.
What I say earlier, it's like me who the only education I've ever had in the medical field is like me taking a stud finder, running it around a room, and going, oh, that's a ghost because there shouldn't be a stud there. It's someone who doesn't understand the equipment, doesn't understand the science, and doesn't even understand the conclusion they're supposed to come to.
I think it's interesting that we moved in a direction at some point in the 70s to, hey, we're going to try to measure ghosts with EMF detectors, right? But what brought somebody to that conclusion that they thought ghosts are made of EMF or give off EMF or anything like that?
I think they were using the assumption that because your brain is electric activity, therefore ghosts would be, because they're assuming ghosts are human. Once again, it's all assumption.
So here's an interesting scenario, because I did a lot of reading on EMFs this week, right? So if your soul or your ghost or whatever the hell you want to call it is made of EMF and it can be detected by EMF, if I take an EMF detector and I hold it up to your body,
it doesn't get a reading.
I'm not going to get a reading.
Even when I had that electric thing in my back, it didn't get a reading.
Right. The amount of EMF that you give off is 0.00000. Yeah, it's very small. Even the most sensitive EMF detectors aren't going to pick it up. If your body and brain, which produce electrical energy, plus your soul, which is supposed to be made of this electrical energy, doesn't set off my detector, why would soul minus body?
Yeah, because the only thing keeping that electricity running is your body. Without the body, there's no electricity.
Right. But okay, so let's stay on the side of.
Oh yeah, Daniel says, how can you build a device to investigate and detect ghosts when we don't even know what the hell they are? Yeah, that's the point. I mean,
most EMF detectors are advertised as ghost detectors. They're not, like, if you look up EMF detector, like, you're only going to get like one or two legitimate detectors that are made for work in the electrical field, and it's very specific things that those were designed to be used for to begin with. Everything else on that list is this overpriced ghost detector. That's what's there.
We're assuming we are assuming we know what ghosts are, and we're assuming we know how they're going to interact with the environment.
So the way I always explain it, so ghost hunters, they go out and they try to measure the ghost. You know, every device you use, it's some type of measuring device, whether it's EMF,
or these ITC devices.
ITC device, you know, you're measuring. Oh, there's this fluctuation there, and it makes voids. You're doing some kind of.
I love the ITC devices because I can't work them, but we're assuming a ghost would know how to work them.
Like my granddad can't program his VCR, but I'm thinking after he's dead, he's going to be able to go into my smartphone and pull out mysterious words out of a word bank, and I can't make it say certain words by physically manipulating it. I mushed my
fingers all over that word bank, and I could not make it. It would bring up words at random, but it would not spit out specific words. There was no pattern.
Oh, Aloy's a step ahead of me. What if our bodies suppress the energy once we die? So I was saying,
the problem is then it has nothing to feed on. It doesn't have a battery.
Well, what I was going to say is if you stick with the idea that ghosts or spirit energy does cause EMF, you have to start applying some different logic to it. One, our soul isn't always in our body or whatever. It's located in another place, and then when we die, like it comes back together and creates that energy. Another thought is that what you're not detecting isn't actually the spirit, but like the opening and closing of a portal between dimensions, basically. And I've always thought that, like, do I think EMFs are ghosts when we get EMF spikes? No, I don't. Do I think that there's some kind of like relationship by accident? Yeah, I think what you're measuring is like basically a byproduct of paranormal activity, or possibly the thing that makes you think that paranormal activity is going on, because high EMFs,
they mess with your brain.
They mess with your brain. And now that I know that dust makes high EMF, if your house is dirty, you probably.
I don't think it's enough.
I don't know. Yeah, it takes long-term exposure, but I'm putting like new logic to what I like about what we do is we learn new information that's not related to the paranormal, and then we apply that logic to our experiments and what we're. So now I'm thinking of dust is a new element in the things that we do. Is like, well, now knowing that dust can create EMF and bounce EMF around, how does that alter the data that we're looking at. And I think it alters it greatly. I think it's we always knew dust was a contaminant, like for photos, but now, like, it's occurring to me that the dust in itself is a way bigger contaminant than what we thought it was, which means we need to be more careful, more deliberate, and make allowances. And you know, I like Emilio's thought to it. Like, what if you put a deionizer in there? That's that's great. You're creating a control.
Yeah.
You're creating that's perfect.
At least you're thinking of something new.
Yeah, shit, that took him 5 seconds to think of. You know, what if he really thought on that for a long time, now armed with this new information? How do we negate this? It's like the same argument. I think the SB7 Spirit Box is interesting. I think it makes me want to bash my head against the wall until my brains leak out because it's loud and irritating, but I find it interesting. Well, I think it's interesting in concept. I think out of the box, it doesn't prove jack shit because it can still pick things up.
Yeah.
And I think the person that made it understands how burst transmission works and wanted to make a shit ton of money off of it. But I've gotten in so many arguments about detuning my box. Well, all you're doing is you're making it so the spirits... Well, yeah. If there's a spirit here, that's what I want to talk to, not if it's in San Diego or in the next room or anything like that. I don't want radio transmissions. And if they can only communicate through radio transmissions, then okay, we need to design a more controlled experiment. So I'm tuning in on that specific radio transmission. And the more I get into it now, the more I don't actually like the flipping through channels thing, because initially what it was, the idea, it was a good proof of concept, is that, you know, if you get a full sentence over a sweep, it couldn't be a transmission because it was on different stations.
Every time I see people using these SB7s, it's always they're pulling out one word.
Yeah, and so I would rather let it just sit on static and take the chance that somebody broadcasts over that, because burst transmission works that way anyway. The little in between, you can still get it.
I can get 97.1 on 97.3 and 96.9.
Yeah,
it's not good, but I can still get it.
So the sweeping doesn't. It was a good idea. It was a good proof of concept, but it didn't negate it. It didn't prove anything. So you may as well just leave it on an open channel, because we've got results back on it.
Julie says, people die and are brought back. Why are they not lost to us? Where is the line between us, the emerging soul, and consciousness? See, this is a difficult argument for me because I don't believe in souls.
Yeah.
I think everything we are is in our brain. And when people are brought back, it's restarting. With their brain never go. If your brain dies, you're not coming back.
Nobody's ever been brought back from brain death?
Brain death?
Yeah.
Not to be a person again.
They're just a vegetable after that?
If your brain dies, you're dead.
Melted the hard drive at that point.
You fried your computer. That's why people always talk about, life begins when the heartbeat starts. No, that is not the marker for life and death.
It's brain activity.
Meaningful brain activity is the marker of life and death.
What about people that have drowned? You know, obviously people have been brought back in different stages of being dead for a certain amount. When does brain death start?
You're not dead until you're warm and dead. There's a big saying in the EMS field. You're not dead until you're dead. How
long do you have to be dead before brain death starts?
5 to 6 minutes. Without oxygen.
That's not a very long time at all.
Now, if you're in frozen water, if you're hypothermic to an extreme degree, 40 minutes an hour.
Okay, so there are people that have drowned or whatever and brought back after 1 or 2 minutes. They come back, they're no worse for wear. They come back, they're fine.
Most of them experience some sort of deficit, but they can be totally normal.
So, if your soul is your personality and things like that, what if you're dead for 5 minutes and they bring you back and you have this weird personality shift and things like that? Because that happens, right?
So my mom was in the hospital and she flatlined. She was without oxygen for, I think, 4 minutes. And she came back with some deficits, like some memory problems. But yeah, people have been brought back to life and had personality shifts and stuff because it starts to fry their frontal lobe. Their brain starts to die. It just doesn't finish the process.
Daniel says 6 to 12 minutes, actually. That's your friend.
I'm not sure we can come back. I think all that they go away. Yeah, but anyway, it doesn't matter how long, but once your brain is dead, you're dead. Oh, huh. Allie says she has a crazy story about a brain dead patient we had at Baylor. Yeah, I want to hear the story.
Yeah. But people that get so I tend to agree with you. Like the idea of soul is like who you are as a person. I
think it's a completely religious idea.
Yeah. But when people think of the soul, they're like, oh, that's who I am. That's my body is just my physical form. But
so they're thinking of a soul like a backup hard drive. Like
I don't know, but I think of situations where people have experienced extreme brain damage or whatever, and they come like a completely different person or a vegetable or what. They're not themselves anymore. So did their soul get damaged?
Yeah, did their soul get damaged, or is your brain who you are?
Right. Or does that body not have a soul? There's all these like philosophical questions that kind of go in there, and you have to divorce yourself from that with I think people get up in arms about the particular type of study that we do, because I think what I think is dumb about ghost hunting and paranormal investigation is that people don't go in with a specific goal or a specific set of questions that they want answers to. They go in and say, I just want to study the paranormal. And maybe that's not done, depending on who you're trying to prove it to. Once again, it goes back to that. If you're just doing it for you, that's fine. I'm fine with any of these answers. But when you're trying to give answers to other people as some kind of expert or whatever, then suddenly I take offense to that. And I think people take issue with the fact that we have a specific set of criteria that we're trying to answer and get to the bottom of. And we have a very specific set of criteria that we're using to do it. Psychics? No, it's not happening. Ouija board, unproven tools are not part of our accepted experimentation.
Oh, Julie says I didn't mean that in a religious context. Yeah, I know, but I think the soul is by definition religious.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, talk to an atheist about it. They're still going to have a sense of self, but they don't think that there's a...
I do not think I have a soul. I do not think anyone does.
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. This is what I think.
Yeah.
I know nothing.
Well, I don't even know what I think most days. Is I think what I was trying to say is, I'm not a real religious person, but I'm not an atheist either. Like I'm very atheist agnostic or whatever. I don't know. I just kind of like let things fall.
Whereas I lean towards atheist, you lean towards I don't know.
Yeah, I really just don't know. Like, I feel like we're talking about feelings and things like that again. I feel like there's more meaning to all of it. I feel like there's something else, but that could just be that we lightly touch another dimension, and I have this weird feeling in me that there's something else going on. But
so back on the note cards. So that was eyewitness accounts being the biggest evidence.
Well, what I was getting to was the equipment thing. So we use like a specific type of criteria and a specific set of equipment. We have gone to great lengths, or I know I have gone to great lengths to make sure everybody in our group understands what our equipment is and exactly what it's measuring. Hey, this thing doesn't measure ghosts. This thing measures electromagnetic activity.
Or this thing doesn't measure ghosts. It measures vibrations.
Right.
Or infrasound.
And this is the correct way to use it without contamination and things like that. But you have this slew of paranormal investigation equipment that you can buy at paranormal investigation stores and things like that. And it's this real predatory sort of aspect to the paranormal investigation
So much of
field.
the equipment we use, people don't understand. It's frustrating.
Well, we do,
because I don't even understand a lot of it.
But I also think it's good that there's a popularity in it, and that we're using more equipment in the asking. I think that's one of the things that's good, that it's innovating.
I was going to say that a lot of this falls under the last edition we had, which was predatory behavior in ghost hunting, because the people that make this stuff know it's not for ghost hunting. They're producing it for some sort of career field, and then they go, oh, But people that want to hunt ghosts want to buy this. I'm going to put some lights on it and glue some crystals to it, and they're going to shell out tons of bucks for it.
Especially with like the advent of like the ITC apps and stuff like that. Like it's so entry level to be able to make like apps on a phone or software or something like that. So you can make like some kind of random word generator algorithm thing like that and say, oh, it's a ghost that manipulates it.
Yeah.
And people will buy it and believe it, and they don't understand it, but they take it as proof. It's a blind faith sort of thing.
What was the thing Haiti had that would spit out syllables, not whole words, but syllables? But she went into
Echovox.
but she actually went into the code and proved it was listening.
Yeah, it's pulling random words out of the conversations that you're having and then spitting it back out.
Of course, the word correlates to the question because it was listening to the question.
Yeah, and then you start going back and forth with it, and you end up in this never-ending cycle. But that's people not understand. Like, if a non-programmer picks that up and starts using it, how do they know? They have to go off of what it's sold at. If I'm selling IR equipment, I say ghosts only show up in IR, you're going to get orbs with this, and they start getting orbs with it, they're going to, because they don't know anything about photography.
Well, and like the next comment was, they throw out contradicting facts. And that's what happened when Haiti went into that code. People just threw her studies into the trash because they didn't like what it said.
Yeah.
You're wrong because I don't like it. Not how things work.
Yeah, if it doesn't support my evidence, then then I'm just going to omit it from my research. It is kind of the thought process. But with us, we scrutinize over it even more. We're like, okay, this and this and this all line up, but if that's really a thing, how does this? There's no way that this could part C exist. Like, this completely blows all that out. Yeah. And so we can still present it as, look, this was like the result we got, but this thing really contradicts what that's saying. So where do we go from there? And that's where we get some of our best ideas for a new experiment.
And Emilio says, I hate that we waste money on apps and tools just to figure out they don't work the way we want or need them to work.
Yeah. And it's a marketing gimmick, man, because like I can't think of a piece of paranormal equipment that's under like $40, even if you get like a germanium diode, which we use a germanium diode. And the only reason I think it's a good piece of paranormal equipment is because we get zero results with it. I think it's actually doing what it's supposed to be doing, and we never get anything on it.
See, the next point kind of ties into these is that they belittle other views. Like, once again, for example, when Haiti produced that article or whatever, people just crapped on her.
Yeah.
You're an idiot because I don't believe the same.
Oh, they called her ditzy. And so I'm like, well, obviously she was smart enough to pull the fucking API apart.
Yeah, smart enough to do something you can't.
Yeah, read the code. And everybody was like, oh, you're just... Because what it is people were getting results with it that were relevant to them. Mm-hmm. Well, obviously because of the way the app worked. And it's like I got torn apart too when I was talking about can the ghost detector apps really pick up EMF?
Julie says, I hate the single word generation apps. People create whole dialogues to go along with a single word and call it communication.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it said kill because it killed this guy. It strangled him right here and it wants to confess to its crime. It said none of that.
And then it'll
just say kill.
Then it'll be like, yes. And you're like,
he's agreeing with me.
The one I really hate is people using EMF detectors to communicate.
You make it say yes and no.
Well, no. They don't do, that's not what they do. They say, if the answer is no, don't do anything. If it's yes, make it go off. And they'll ask a question.
And it won't do anything. It's a no.
Well, no, they'll never do that. They'll just wait forever till they get the yes. And, the experiment is flawed because it can only do one thing.
Yeah.
Spike. But you're wanting it to do a 50-50 thing. Mm-hmm. And we tried it for a little while.
We'd say a negative, too.
Yeah.
It not doing anything means nothing.
What I thought was interesting was when we took two EMF detectors that were the same brand, same type, everything, and put them far enough apart from each other that they wouldn't get the same readings. And we said one of these is yes,
and the other is no.
One of them is no. And I think the results were still random, but at least we were doing something different where it would where the polarization.
And the other
would
thing
be
that bugs
backwards.
me is they ask questions that can't be proven either way. It's the last thing on this
Yes.
list is really all this can be summed up by it's not objective. They're asking questions. That's why I came up with some control questions recently. When I go into a place, I say, where are we? What town are we in? What was this place used for? Those are things we can prove.
Yeah, because they'll ask like, "Who are you? Were you murdered?
Are you happy? How do you feel right now?
Right?" And they're like, "Oh, I got." Well, back to Jared. He was doing the pendulum or whatever, and he's like, "Yeah, it like knew me really well or whatever." Well, you were the one holding the pendulum, and you're the only one that knew the answers to those questions. What you should have done was gave it to somebody that doesn't know anything about you and ask questions about you.
Yeah.
And then see what the results were. That's why, and the other thing is we use a control subject, which is really good. They don't know anything about the past and things like that. But I don't know. What do you think? So there's a lot to bag on with how investigations are conducted and what they're doing and things like that. But do you think it's all crap? Do you think anybody's on the right track for anything? Are there any experiments that are good?
I think a lot of the experiments are good.
I think the innovation is like through the roof, like way more than it used to be. Like during the spiritualism movement, now you have new technology coming out. You were mentioning the SLS camera.
Yeah, I think it's stupid, but I like that they tried it.
I love the thought process behind it. It's like, oh, we're going to take this thing, point it at a blank room, and see if it finds shapes in the blankness. Because you would think a computer wouldn't do that, but me being a programmer and doing a lot of stuff with electronics, I know it's actually more prone because it's constantly scanning for shapes it can put together, like even more than we are. And so it's more prone to just make shapes out of nowhere. But I love the thought process behind it. It's like, hey, I have this other bit of technology. What if I do this thing with it? What's the result going to be? And then, of course, whoever came up with it first got a result and was like, hey, I can make some money off of this if I sell it to ghost hunters,
We're a gullible group as a whole.
Maybe the guy that made the first SLS camera doesn't get that.
Wasn't it originally for like
Xbox?
Yeah, Xbox. It was for the Kinect.
Yeah. So I
And
guarantee
it was in a movie, Paranormal Activity, remember?
Yeah, and I guarantee the guy that wrote the software for the Kinect 100% understands that you can point it at a blank room and it's going to pick out shapes. That guy gets it. But no one's listening to that guy when he's like, hey, that's not what my software's... That's not what my... Well, that's the other thing, is we're using equipment in ways they're not designed to operate. So... Because
there's no specifically ghost hunt... I mean, except for the ITC devices, which are mostly a joke.
Right.
There's no ghost hunting equipment.
But the SLS, the Xbox Kinect was never meant to be pointed at a blank room and just find shapes.
Yeah.
But that's what we're using it for. An EMF detector was never meant to find portals. It was meant to find ferrous bounces of radiation.
Oh, yeah. I always says, like, when people take Snapchat pics and the filter puts ears on. Yeah, that's...
I think that's the genesis of that idea, too.
It's face swapped with nothing.
But I think as technology advances, so I got the new virtual reality thing for PlayStation. The first thing I thought was like, oh man, how cool would it be to film our investigation? And I had this idea when 3D was a big thing, and I hadn't done it yet. But I want to take 2 cameras and film our investigation IR in 3D as a further debunk of it. Because if an orb goes by in 3D and you're watching it in that 3D space, you're going to be able to see the depth and dimension as opposed to watching it on that flat screen. It's going to be total. Like, I wish we could have caught the thing we found at Warehouse 9 on a 3D camera and then watched it on because then you'd be able to see it in real time and go back over it and over and over it. And then as soon as the virtual reality thing, I was like, oh my God, if I had one of these cameras that filmed everything around, we could go back and review evidence. I could look behind me and see what was actually going on, or I could look to the right, things like that.
Emilio asks, how do you explain away the Kinect mapping a figure in an empty room? Because it's looking for ratios.
Yeah, it's looking for it's
like how you see faces in drywall.
Yeah,
it's looking for something that gives off the ratio or the aspects of being a face.
I mean, do I think it's interesting? Yeah. Especially when. Okay, so I was watching Ghost Adventures the other day. And it was that one where there's like that bed frame in the back,
and the little figure pops
so
up.
I noticed, and I think they do this for the show, but I noticed when they get a lot of the frame mappings and they're asking questions and things like that, he's filming very specific points in the room and holding very still at certain times because it's places where things would likely get mapped. So there's like a bed frame in the back, and it always appeared there, and then like it skipped over and it moved because he's moving, so he's altering it. It's handheld camera is the worst thing for evidence because any alterations you do to it alter what you're seeing.
It's just looking for the shape. It knows what a human shape like.
It's looking for 7 points, and then the SLS mapping software. It's also tweaked where it's more accepting of other shapes. Like, so when Microsoft uses it for Xbox, it's looking for things in a specific ratio to humans. Well, that code can be tweaked where it's like, well, it's okay if it's got really long arms.
Yeah.
Or the feet are turned backwards or the head's 6 feet long. And so it's like, basically just map any 7 points.
Yeah.
And, it's good. And it'll draw these like weird lines. But
it's a cool idea, but in practice, it doesn't really hold up.
Yeah, it doesn't hold up as evidence because there's too much room for error. Because I can film a chair and just get the same.
If it maps something in the room and you took a picture and you saw a figure, that would be good evidence, I think, right?
Yeah, because it correlates.
Yeah, but its own doesn't stand up.
Yeah. Well, nothing we find on its own
stand up.
Our EVPs don't stand up on their own. Our pictures don't stand up on their own. But you never seem to get multiple, and that's why I liked the orbs.
A picture at the same time you get an EVP. Yeah.
Yeah. You never get a picture or a video at the same time you get the EVP or an experience. You get experiences at the same time, and that's why orbs are such a great thing because. Oh, an orb came by at the same time because it always happens, and it turns out it might be the freaking cause of some of the evidence you're getting. I don't know. It's just I don't think there's a big enough sample, and I don't think the samples are being correlated together to actually mine out the correct information. Because a lot of what we find is we find people have a lot of emotional trauma, and that seems to be the correlating factor between all the. If you've had a paranormal experience, you've had some kind of emotional experience.
I mean, what you put here is the popularity is bringing more tech and ideas into the fold. It's like, so they diagnosed me with celiac disease, right? And people were so mad at the people that were doing it as a popularity diet. But because those people were doing it,
it was now available to
they
you.
made a ton of foods I wanted. It's the same thing happening with ghost hunting. Some people don't like that it's so popular because any old person can do it. But we're getting so many ideas.
Yeah.
And so many valid things we can try and do.
Well, that's where the best ideas come from is when, it becomes, you want to be hipster about everything and be the one that came up with the idea. But the more people you have thinking on something, the more radical ideas or ingenious ideas. Like, why the hell did I think that dust created static? But once I consulted the hive mind that is Google, suddenly it clicked. And I don't know how many people in the paranormal field are thinking this way. Like, it seems really obvious. And maybe nobody's thinking that way because it is so obvious. Everybody assumes the other person has allotted for this information. Like, I assumed that this was something that, obviously it's not. But I don't know. I looked, and, people seem genuinely surprised by this. And I'm like, holy crap, why didn't I come up with this? I'm a complete idiot. And I think that's how the best science happens is somebody's doing something, they're really working this way, and they're doing everything right, and then suddenly they just go, oh, I'm a moron.
Yeah.
I'm just a complete idiot.
What was it, The Good Place, where we need to have a discussion, and then someone will say totally random, and I'll go, wait a minute.
We'll throw pencils up in the ceiling, and then somebody say that again.
Yeah, they'll say something totally benign, and I'll go, say that again.
Yeah. I think that is how the best discovery
it's like
happen.
House. He's just having a conversation with somebody, and he goes, oh, and wanders off. That's how things happen. What about seeing apparition but not being able to photograph? It turns into just a fog or light in the photograph. What?
Oh, she's talking. What if you have a personal experience and you're not able to document it?
It doesn't count.
Yeah, it's. I mean, that's great
It
for
sucks,
you. But I see stupid crap out the corner of my eye all the time. It doesn't mean it's actually there.
Science isn't very forgiving.
Not at all. It's an absolute. Unless it can be documented objectively, it doesn't
makes no
count.
difference.
It doesn't count. And that's what we're looking for. Is we're looking for the thing that is objectively documented. Not that we always think that the stuff is bullcrap. Mm-hmm. Like I've had experiences. Yeah. I've had genuine experiences, and I don't think my senses were. I know my senses can fail me, and it is a possibility. I don't think my senses failed me at that time, but the goal is if you do everything right and you objectively capture something that's not based on how I felt or what I saw or what I thought at the time, it gets more to the line, to the irrefutable side. And if you get more and more and more supporting evidence, then suddenly you have an argument on your hands. A million people could tell me they saw a ghost. But if you capture one on tape with good measurements and good controls, that one tape,
your picture's worth 1,000 words.
I can disbelieve a million people, but not something that is divorced from all that emotion and experience, and something that can't be flawed. Now, right now, video and photography can be flawed. That's the problem. We've got a ton of pictures of ghosts and a ton of video of ghosts and things like that. But with the current methods, it can be flawed. So that's what we're going is how do we make a flawless capturing system? Well, first we have to understand what we're trying to capture. Like, why is it reflecting light so that we can get stuff, right? So we have to debunk a whole bunch of shit, like orbs. Okay, orbs aren't a thing now. Okay, what's the next thing? Well, people get apparitions more often on IR camera. Oh, does that mean it's in the infrared spectrum? We can't see it with the naked eye. Okay, we have to use IR lighting and things like that where we can control the lights, because certain things only come up in certain spectrums and they bleed through. So you have to start eliminating things at a certain point until you get down to where there is only a few possible solutions. If you have more than one solution, you don't have a solution.
Yeah. See, another positive that you put down was that it helps people cope.
Yeah. What I wanted to talk about is okay, so we've talked about all these things that make paranormal investigation stupid, right? It's a stupid feel. It's silly. You're talking to ghosts. You're sitting in a room by yourself, and all the clients said, they're like, "Man, I thought this would be more exciting."
It is absurd.
We're sitting in a room for 6 hours, going, "What is your name?
How did you die? Were you ever human?
Can you move this water bottle?"
Knock 3 times.
Like, if you were a ghost and somebody was just sitting in that room, they're like, "Can you move this water bottle?" Are you fucking kidding? I'd be like, "Are you kidding me right now? You're an idiot." Just these people are stupid. Let's just sit here. Let's see how long they'll sit here and ask benign questions holding this thing. What is that supposed to do? I don't know, Fred. Poke it. Is it doing anything? No, because it doesn't measure me. These people are stupid, And I think, in going back to I like your idea about understanding the motivations of these things, because what's your argument about elephants?
No, it was an argument of.
I like calling it the baby elephant argument.
Ghosts find us cute.
Yeah.
And the baby elephant thing came about because Steven said, I'd asked him about this idea. So they did some scans and they found out that elephants find humans cute. And that's why they interact with us.
Right.
And we interact with babies, puppies, stuff, because they're tiny and we think they're cute.
Right.
But baby elephants are bigger than us. We still find them cute. Mm-hmm. Right?
Because of the features.
Yeah, it's not a size thing, but so my idea was...
It is kind of a size. They're almost more cute because they're big but still have baby face.
But my idea was maybe ghosts interact with us because they find us cute and entertaining.
Right.
So how do we act cute to a ghost? We don't know what ghosts find cute.
Yeah.
We have no clue.
Well, so what spurred that mode of thinking too is I was like, we keep trying to communicate with ghosts, but we don't understand the motivations.
Why would they want to talk to us?
Well, and not only that, but we keep applying logic or motivations such as good and evil to them. So people think like, oh, if a ghost pushed me or pinched me,
it's evil. It's bad.
It's evil. It wants to do bad things to me. Or if a ghost did this, it's a helpful ghost. It's a friendly ghost. And the thing is it's a ghost.
How do you know that?
It doesn't know, because I'm pretty sure cows, we're pretty friendly to cows right up until we want to turn it into a fucking hamburger.
Yeah.
Does that make us evil? Depending on who you ask, but it's not an evil intent. It's not a murderous intent. It's I want to eat this thing.
And if you ask a ghost, if you go into a room and you say, "Hey, ghost, interact with me," and it pushes you, how do you not know that that's not just the interacting you asked for? It wasn't trying to hurt you. It was doing what you said.
I thought you wanted to be pushed, you idiot. Yeah, and so you're applying human modes of thinking to a thing like that. So if you step outside of that and you're like, okay, how do things interact with it? Because little kids burn ants with a magnifying glass, and they're not necessarily evil; they're just dicks, But so if you start thinking of spirits or these paranormal things in terms of it's alien to us, and it. And morality doesn't play a factor anymore, and you shed these tropes of like angel, demon, ghost, good, bad, and start thinking of it that way, interaction suddenly takes on a whole new form.
Yeah, Julie says we don't know what makes good ghost bait, and Daniel says it may be the only way they can communicate. The question becomes, what would make it want to talk to me?
Yeah, and we arrived at you need to be cute. So you need to wear a short skirt.
You either need to be cute and make it interested in you, or
piss it off.
You need to piss it off.
Yeah, poke it with a stick.
But if an ant bites you, you kill it. So we threw
that
idea.
That's right. That's the other side of the argument is like, okay, there's two. So if an ant colony wanted to communicate with human, like it turns out it's smarter than us.
There's two ways.
There's two ways. They can. What was the first way?
They can sting you.
Right.
If an ant colony wants to get your attention, they can sting you.
But I would kill it.
Or they can get together and spell out a word or do circus tricks.
Right.
But
then they're doing circus tricks, and you think you can train them and can control them and all that good stuff.
Then you have slave ants.
So why the fuck would ghosts perform tricks for us?
Yeah, I don't.
Because we would just find a way to enslave it and then have sex with it. Because that's what humans do.
And there's
ultimately.
people out there that already think they're doing it with ghosts, so they're marrying them because ghosts can consent.
What states is that legal in?
I don't fucking know. But anyway, yeah, that was the idea, is you either have to do something that would make the ghost interested in you, or you have to do something that would piss the ghost off.
But, so I'm sorry I derailed us this time.
Yeah.
But we were talking about...
ghost hunting helps you deal with grief?
Yeah. So
we're talking about positives of ghost hunting.
Yeah. So we're super skeptical. We're way on the skeptical side at this point. I know we're really not, but when you look at
be cute and piss
when you look at the evolutionary chart of ghost hunters that are out there for you to follow on Facebook, we're way on the fucking skeptic graph. People are like, don't fucking talk to them. They'll just disillusion you and make you hate the paranormal, and they just bag on everybody.
Yeah, that guy called us skeptics. I was like, but we're ghost hunters. We're not skeptics.
Yeah. If I was totally skeptical, we wouldn't keep doing it. So if we're that skeptical, though, why do we continue to ghost hunt? If there's all this stuff that's stupid about ghost hunting, why do we continue to do it?
What if? That's why I continue to do it.
Well, I think personally, I've been wrong before. At some point you get to your eureka moment.
Irene says, my issue is I have all this evidence from the past 25 years in my computer and what to do with it. I mean, it's sitting there collecting dust. Like, after all this time, I honestly don't know what to do with it anymore.
I don't know. Send it to me. I don't know. When we first started ghost hunting, like, we weren't posting stuff on the internet. We were just collecting it and putting it together. And
I mean, when I first started ghost hunting, I was doing EVPs and I wasn't even listening to them.
Yeah, you were just going out.
I was just going out and asking questions.
Yeah, I think the only EVPs we've listened to from then is the ones I found years later of y'all trying to see if Ghost farted.
Yeah.
But
I was 19. You don't get me.
I've always been interested in like media and stuff like that. So when we were collecting all this footage and pictures and stuff like that, I was like, oh, I want to do something with it, or I want to save it. And the best way to save it is to like I just put it on like my YouTube account, my Facebook account, and things like that. And what was it?
That's really a good answer for Irene. Is what do you do with it? You make something out of it and put it on the internet.
I'm finding Reddit is a great outlet.
I kept
for
telling
some of
you
that
to get
stuff.
on Reddit.
I know,
and you were just like, "No, Reddit's stupid."
It was just another thing that I had to jack with. But I like the community there a little bit better. Maybe not the moderators, but I like the community.
No,
there.
I like the people on Reddit a lot.
Yeah. It's a good place to post a lot of stuff like that. Where
you get good ideas, and a lot of people. I mean, some people are still just dicks, but you do get a lot of constructive criticism.
You know, it's really weird on the paranormal Reddits. I don't see as many trolls.
Yeah.
So like when I post on any of the Facebook groups, it's just this
it's nonsense.
It's the same thing over and over and over and over. When I post in Reddit, and it's not an echo chamber, you get both sides, but the posters are more like eloquent. Like they make points. Like it was really weird. Like I posted up that picture set from Jefferson in there. The very first post is like, man, I saw the little red dot in the bottom left, and I thought, oh, please tell me this guy's an orb. But then I read your description on there, and I saw the shadow, and I was like, oh, that's somebody just walking by there. And then I continued to read your description about how you debunked that part and all this stuff, and he was like, it was a very good story. This was an excellent find. He's like, if I would have just looked at the picture, I wouldn't have understood any of it. I was like, thank you very much. And he follows us now.
Well, it's like I write stories for No Sleep sometimes, and even if they don't like a story, they'll get on there and they'll say, here's what I liked about it. Here's what I didn't like. Maybe here's what you could do different. That's what I like about Reddit. On Facebook, people just seem to want to bag on you.
Yeah.
Like it's
ultimately,
their job.
So I was just putting stuff like on my personal Facebook page and YouTube and stuff, and people had comments and questions and things like that. So ultimately, we made a website. We were a website before we were a group. It was just a place to put everything, because I also do web development, and then we started like deconstructing what we were doing, and we're like, well, we actually want to get like real answers. What would happen if we did things a different way? And we started doing that, and it became like a team sort of effort thing. So my advice to you, Irene, is to post it like in Reddit or on a Facebook page, or start like something and start putting stuff up a little at a time, and let people ask questions and answer questions about it, but also be open to the criticism of, hey, do you think it could be this, that, or the other? And think about it. Could it really be that? And be okay with that. And just because it could be that thing
doesn't mean it is.
Doesn't mean it is.